welcome back to I'm Still Here. I'm Heather Jose, and I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer in 1998 at the age of 26. And if you've been with us for a little bit, you have definitely heard my story. But today I have a friend with me. Chris is here to share her story. And we met because of metastatic breast cancer. So Chris, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Chris Stark, and I was diagnosed at first when I was 30 back in 2008, and then stage 2 at that time, and then diagnosed at age 39 in 2016 at stage 4.
Okay. So at age 30, your kids were how old?
They were 4 and 6.
Okay. And what did you do for treatment then, or what was the plan?
I had a double mastectomy at the University of Michigan.
Okay.
And from there, I had chemotherapy. I did not have to do radiation because of the mastectomy. And then I was just followed closely, every 3 months, every 6 months. And then I graduated.
Did you ring a bell?
I didn't. My cancer center didn't have a bell. So
yeah.
I have never been a bell ringer. No.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, so I think it's one of those things that, again, in the metastatic world, like ringing a bell is like, oh, come on, because, treatment never really ends, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
But 39 or so 30 and 39, so 9 years in between. I would guess you were probably pretty used to just kind of scanning for things or, going through the process. What changed, or what, I don't know, how would you explain getting that diagnosis?
So, it's kind of an interesting story. I was actually being treated for a reoccurring urinary tract infection. And my primary care doc had sent me to a urologist who ordered a CAT scan. And lo and behold, when they were scanning my kidneys for kidney stones, they found mets to my lungs. Like, it was totally, I didn't have any symptoms that cancer might have been back, other than I had a reoccurring urinary tract infection.
Wow.
Yeah.
And having been stage 2 initially, and then, stage 4, tell me about that.
Yeah, so it was stage 2 by size. It hadn't spread into my lymph nodes, but the tumor itself in my breast was big enough to be considered stage 2. And all about the outlook for early detection. And everybody that I met with was very confident that I'd have a double mastectomy, have chemotherapy, be followed for 5 years. I mean, at the point that I became stage 4, I hadn't seen an oncologist in 4 years.
Okay.
So I mean, it was a shock. I always obviously knew it could come back. I had friends that it had come back, but I figured there'd be symptoms that came with it.
I figured there'd be symptoms too, but
no,
I guess there were some for me. I just didn't really realize that.
Right.
So what happened with that being metastatic? What did you do for there?
Gotta think back. What did the first thing we did was I saw my oncologist here, but we went right to U of M. I had a lung biopsy there, so we could get all the information that we needed about the tumor, so we knew how to treat it. And then my oncologist at U of M worked with my local oncologist, because it's about 3.5 hours for 3 hours for us. And so we developed a plan, and I took Ibrance for 4.5 years, which was an oral drug that worked very, very well for me with very minimal side effects.
Okay. And you were still working?
I was still working full time. I continued to work full time until it'll be 2 years next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your kids then were, I should be able to do math, but a little bit older.
Yeah, so they were 13 and 15 when it came back, which was much hard. I mean, harder on them. When they were 4 and 6, they didn't really get,
Absolutely.
I mean, they knew cancer might make you bald, they knew people could die from it, but it was really whatever we made it out to be at that point, because they were so young, and we made it to be this not a big deal, and that's how they saw it. So it was a lot harder at 13 and 15 because they've then experienced people who have had cancer and died of cancer, and obviously the internet and all the things at their fingertips. So
Well, and even some of the, like we were talking prior to starting this a little bit, all of the pink stuff that happens, right?
right.
I'm
Yes.
sure, your schools also participate in some of that. And
Yeah.
so,
All the pink, I mean, I can think about all the times when my son was little, all the pink socks we bought for football
mhm,
games, and
mhm.
all those things. They have a different meaning when you're stage 4.
Yeah. So it was, how did you put it to them? Or did you just kind of,
So we were very honest from the very beginning that we were stage 4. We were hopeful that there were going to be treatments that were going to give me a good quality of life, but these are the statistics and these are the facts. We kind of figured with the internet at their hands, living in a small town, and just doing what was right. We knew that we just needed to be completely honest and upfront with them. And
mhm,
I'm to this day we still are. Every time that I've had progression, I've said, well, we're not going to tell the kids so we can all be together. Well, within 3 hours, we're FaceTiming or whatever, and I'm just telling them because it's just information that's hard to keep from them.
yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit. I mean, progression, which is
Yeah,
probably the
something
scariest word, right? In
right.
in in
Yeah.
all of this.
Yep, for sure. So the first round of progression I had was after 4.5 years of my initial stage 4 diagnosis.
Mhm,
And again, I didn't have any symptoms. I was seen at that point every 6 months for what would be considered a routine CAT scan.
mhm.
And it picked up that the tumors in my lungs were growing. So in my first 4.5 years of treatment, I had one, I should say, time where tumors had shrunk in my lungs. That's where
Okay.
my cancer is. But since then, I just remained stable, which in the beginning was I didn't like the word stable. I
Yeah.
wanted it to go away, and then you
Yeah.
quickly hear other people's stories, and you realize that stable is really it's a good goal to have. Like
Yeah.
stable,
Absolutely.
yeah. Um, so real briefly after that, I had a treatment for about 4 months. That was terrible. It made me feel terrible, made me look terrible, and it didn't work.
Okay.
So we moved we moved on quickly. My oncologist was a big advocate for clinical trials,
Okay.
and in my limited knowledge of cancer treatment at the time, I always saw clinical trials as like the end. Like
Yeah.
that was the last resort. That's what people did when they ran out of all their options. And so after a lot of discussions with her and some discussions with my oncologist at U of M and some own education, I realized that kind of qualifying for a clinical trial is like winning the lottery almost in the
Yeah.
cancer world. Like
Sure.
I have friends that have now passed on that would have loved to have qualified for a clinical trial.
Absolutely.
So I decided to go that route. And the
Okay.
first clinical trial that I did was oral, and it
Mhm.
worked for 10 months. And
Okay.
so with progression, typically the drug timeline can kind of get smaller and smaller pretty quickly.
Okay.
So we were really, I mean, we were bummed that we had progression, but we were happy that we had 10 really good months on that drug.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just last week started I guess it would be my fourth line treatment, and it's
Okay.
also a clinical trial. It is IV, but it's really pretty fascinating how far treatments have come. It's an antibody treatment, and it is designed to attack the cancer cells. And then the little bit of chemotherapy that's in with this antibody treatment is designed to then eradicate those cancer cells.
Okay.
So the whole purpose is that you'll feel well and look
Yes.
well, and so I'll have my second treatment on Monday, but so far so good.
Awesome. So how often are you doing that?
I'm doing it every other week. So it's a phase 1 trial, and a big purpose of phase 1 is to figure out what the actual dosing is, what people
Mhm.
can tolerate.
Mhm.
So they can do this drug every week, or they can do it every other week, every 4 weeks. So my doctor started me right in the middle, knowing we can increase it or decrease it as needed.
Awesome. And
Yeah,
how have you been feeling?
good. I felt great.
That's awesome.
Other than a short stint with COVID last week. I don't know that I really had many side effects from
Ah,
it.
it's like, of course, does that have to come
I know.
also?
Yeah,
It's been rearing its head again lately, I feel
it
like.
has.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
it's,
but it was interesting. I went 2 months without any treatment.
mhm,
Just there's a washout period usually between treatments, and then qualifying for the clinical trial and everything that goes along with it. I had to have a port put in, that kind of thing.
mhm,
It's interesting how that 2 weeks goes by, and the first month I was still saying washing out the other chemo, but then
okay.
the last like 3-4 weeks have been amazing, because I'm like, oh, this is what it's like to feel normal. Like
Okay.
all of the side effects were gone, and it's kind of we're so used to what our normal is, we kind of forget what a real normal might be like.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true. I think it's that kind of balance of like, wanting to live this really normal life, right? But having
Mhm.
to accept that there are things that are going to be issues, right? For
Right.
when you're on a
Mhm.
medication, when you're, doing those, all sorts of things pop up. But
Absolutely.
yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
Chris. So like when a few weeks, it's been, I don't know, a month or two ago when
Mhm.
Katie and I talked, and
Yeah.
the three of us oftentimes talk together.
Mhm.
And I think it's always, I so appreciate you coming on and talking about something that everybody everybody worries about, right?
Mhm.
Progression,
Right.
and it's really
Mhm.
hard to talk about, but it's also very much a reality of
Mhm.
this world. and
Right.
and what would you say in terms of, is there how have you felt supported, or what helps you when you, as you've had to deal with this a couple times?
Um, that's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
Um, I think I find a lot of my hope in the fact that I continue to qualify for these clinical trials.
Yeah.
It's exciting to be part of how science is progressing, and especially progressing away from the traditional
Yes.
chemotherapy and that type of thing. I like saying that, like, I have a plethora of friends out there, mainly in the virtual world, but some
Yeah.
that I've known personally, like Laura and Rhonda, that
Mhm.
they would have given anything to be in my shoes to have these opportunities.
Yeah.
So even though, like, I can't say that there's like this circle of support. Of course, I have support from my friends and family, but they don't. They try to understand what I'm going through, but they don't really understand what
Sure.
I'm going through.
Yeah.
Um, but really, just the support the fact that science is evolving and I keep qualifying for these scientific treatments is where I find
Mhm.
support,
Okay.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, to me, it's, having watched you, as this has happened, every
Mhm.
time I think, oh, this is going to be the one. Like, this is going to
Right.
be the one.
Yes.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? And that's what I
Yeah.
keep hoping too. Like, this is going to be the one that just says, nope, we'll quiet
Yep.
this right down,
Yep.
and give you years. And it's like,
Mhm.
what is that magic bullet? And I know
Right.
that sounds maybe like crazy optimistic, but I'd rather live that way than,
Absolutely.
you
For
know.
sure.
So
Yeah.
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 So speaking of living that way,
Yeah.
your kind of tagline is "Get busy living."
Yes. Yep.
Tell me a little bit
Um,
about that.
yeah. So in my early stages of stage 4, I think you obviously of Laura McGregor and her
Hmm.
Hope Scarves Foundation. And so she grew up in the same little community that I grew up in. So and we were diagnosed early stage at the same time, and then fairly similar stage, late stage. And she and I would talk on occasion, and there's two things that she said and did that really resonated with me. One of them was, one day she said, somebody had passed this along to her and just said, don't be sad. Why would you want to spend your day sad?
Yeah,
And so and of course we have somewhat sad days, but we
sure,
both know that a positive outlook is way better for our mindset and mindfulness than a
sure.
negative. And so anytime that I felt like feeling sorry for myself, that would like ring a bell. Like, why
Okay.
would I want to spend my day being sad? And then one day out of the blue in the mail, I got this t-shirt. I actually have it on. But Laura,
Oh,
she sent it to me and it said, "Get busy living." And it was just like, how fitting is this for
yeah.
our life? And I just kind of took it and ran with it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So whenever we see Chris doing something fun, there's always a get busy living beside it. And I think it's not always even the fun things, right? It's just
Right.
cancer is always a reminder that we get one shot, right? One
Right.
shot at this life, and it's precious. And
Yeah.
being in moments are so,
Mhm.
it makes all the difference, right? We
It
want to
does.
be in the
Yep.
moment. So
Yep.
big
Yep.
ones and little ones and
Yep.
whatever it looks like, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
So as far as family structure, we have some similarities. We both have husbands who coached football for a million years,
Yes.
and sons who played,
Yes.
and you have a boy and a girl, and I do too. Your
Yep.
kids where are they at in life now?
So Bryce is a senior in college. He is no longer playing football, but he is coaching high school football under his former high school coach.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, so that's been fun. And then my daughter is a freshman at Grand Valley. So we
Okay.
are officially empty nesters until May.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
It's been great.
Yeah.
No, for me, it was never this sad thing. It wasn't, oh my gosh, my kids are leaving. What am I going to do next? It was, oh my gosh, I'm here to see my kids leave.
Yeah.
And this is what I raised them to do. And I'm here to see
Absolutely.
it, which is a bonus. So
It is a bonus. I think, again, that perspective, I felt very much the same way. Of course, my son, he left and then came back fairly quickly. So I was like, wait, I was so ready.
right.
But no, it is all about kind of, taking the things that we've learned and
Mhm.
going from there. So
Absolutely.
what about work?
Yeah. So I always told myself when I was first diagnosed, I'm not going to let cancer define me. And if I quit working, I'm letting cancer define me.
Okay.
And then as time went on, and I had a demanding job in healthcare administration. And I'd come home and often take a nap before the kids got home or before we made dinner. And again, it was another cancer friend, Rhonda Brewer, when
Mhm.
her last days of her life, because she was a rock star and she literally closed on a house and then went into hospice. She said to me, "Chris, don't work until you die."
Yeah.
And it was kind of my aha moment that what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And so I applied for long-term disability through my company
Hmm.
and I was granted it because I am technically terminal. And
Yes.
um it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And then shortly after that I did have progression, which was
Yeah.
I wasn't going to work past that anyway. But just having that whole senior year with my daughter and being home every day when she got home and having meals for her and not being exhausted and um just all the things that the slack my husband picked up because I was working and exhausted, and
Yeah.
just being able to be that normal mom and wife that I've wanted to be has been amazing. It
Yeah.
was, for me, it was one of the best choices I ever made.
I
The-
totally agree. I mean, I spent a lot of years, on disability, and
Mhm.
um, I agree. I think for me,
Yeah.
I needed that time to be able to focus on myself, or to be able to put in the energy to myself and also my family. I don't know if I
Yeah.
could have split it with work also,
Right.
and
Yeah.
yeah. I
Mhm.
agree. We all know that. We all hear, like, nobody's going to say, "Oh, work more. I wish I'd work
Right.
more."
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think a lot of times people are scared to try to access some of those things, but sometimes
Mhm.
they work out too,
They do, yeah.
and
I got this fun little side gig, pouring beer at our favorite brewery in town.
I love it.
So I do that like a day a week, and it's like a little family down there. And
Hmm.
if anybody could have told me that work could be so much fun again.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
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 Oh, Chris, there's so
Mhm.
much that you can teach us about living this whole thing, but I can't
Mhm.
remember how we met at the beginning. Do you?
I don't. I mean, I remember right away hearing about you. Right, I bought your book and read it, and Rana and I would sit and talk about you and how we wanted to meet you and be just like you. I've often said you're my hero because you are.
Oh, thanks.
So I think was it somebody put together like a Michigan meeting or something? I think
Okay.
maybe we met over
I don't,
dinner.
was it the first like little dinner thing that we did?
I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Katie's probably partially responsible for that because I feel
Katie,
like she's
yeah.
pretty good at
And
that.
I think wasn't Trish a big part of that?
Oh, maybe.
I think she might have been.
Okay. Yeah, she
Yeah.
was doing the whole more of the Michigan stuff in general.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um, what would you tell people that were just diagnosed?
What would I tell people that were just diagnosed? Don't read the stuff on the internet.
Mm, amen,
And
sister.
just, find a good headspace and find hope, because it's so easy to go down the dark tunnel, hopeless tunnel of what your life might be like, and find hope. I think mindfulness and that whole being in a good place, your attitude isn't going to save your life, but it is definitely going to help your quality of life. It is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, do you do, I see you sometimes on social media. I think we're both kind of on there a little, but not a ton. Do you do
Mhm.
like groups, Facebook groups, things like that?
Yes. I mean, I'm part of a bunch of them. I'm not a very active participant in
Hmm.
them. I won't lie, when I was first diagnosed, like that was what I did. Like that was
Yeah.
I read everything. I wanted to know all the stories, the good and the bad. And then I think as you learn more about yourself, you realize what works for you. And
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I mean, we can't, boy, we can't replicate the stories anyway, right? Even if
right.
we
Yeah.
wanted to, right? So
Hmm. Yeah.
it's really, um, are you still involved with Hope Scarves? Any of those kind of things?
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a lot. I try to figure out all the time, like I've said this for years since I was diagnosed, like, okay, what's the purpose in this? What's my
Mhm.
role supposed to be? And it really just resonated with me, just to be a mom and to
Yeah.
focus on my family and
Yeah.
to work on my health and to be as healthy as I can. And now that the kids are out of the house and I have way more free time
Yeah.
than I did, I keep thinking like, okay, do I have a bigger purpose in this? But I don't really know what I want my voice to be. I've been to some of the Metavivor events. They're
Mhm.
fabulous. I've helped with the color of courage through Hope Scars.
Mhm.
I'm just not really sure what my calling is.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it doesn't have to be cancer related because I
Mhm.
think again that it just so relates back to how we live our lives, right? And
Right.
even so much, what you're showing your kids too in terms of importance of being in moments and
Hmm.
I think sometimes, yeah, it doesn't have to be all of one thing, and it might be just even
Right.
the fun and the attitude that you
Hmm.
have on days that you're hanging out pouring beer.
Right. Yeah.
Like
Yep.
being able to
Yeah.
share that and inspiring people and
Hmm.
just showing them that way. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, do you have anything else you want to tell the tell the podcast people?
Not that I can think of right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe sometime if we
Mhm.
can make it work, we'll see if we can uh, get our husbands all to jump on here too
Yeah,
and,
that'd be
and
fun.
talk about a little bit about caregiving and
Hmm.
supporting each of us through all of that. I
Absolutely.
know I've tried to get Larry to talk about it, and he has a little bit, but he's fairly reluctant in that. "Oh, I just did what I was going to do, but I think there is really
Hmm.
a big piece in that as well.
Hmm.
So
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I just want to say thank you for coming
Yeah.
on,
Thanks for
and
having me.
yeah,
For
and
sure.
maybe we could also just do a Chris and Katie meeting at
Yeah.
some time too to talk about just. I'm sure there's
Hmm.
other things as well, and
Yeah,
we're
that'd be
always looking
awesome.
for ideas.